This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
To start with yourself, how is it, being a fan once again?
Other than last night, yeah, it's great. It's obviously, lifetime of a fan. I mean, 60 odd years of a fan. So it's easy to put my shirt back on as I did last night and cheer for the team and not have to worry about showing elegance, courtesy, decorum in the director's box. So, no, it's fine. And last night, I'm sure, was just a little bit of a speed bump.
Yeah, just crazy game.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to your first days at the club then back in June 2017. I think it was announced a little bit earlier that you were going to join later that year. How did it all come about and what were your feelings at the time? Because it must have been a bit of a dream come true for yourself.
Yeah, look, I'd been over quite a bit prior to that. I was a boardroom member in the new main stand, and so I had joined, as kind of a super fan, if you like, at that point, and was flying over from San Francisco every opportunity that I possibly could to enjoy my boardroom seats in the wonderful new main stand. And during that period of time, I was contacted, as these things often happen, through an executive recruiter, and lengthy conversations ensued between the recruiter and then ultimately FSG ownership. And finally, after understanding what the role was, said yes. And I think the announcement had to be made rather hastily in late February, actually. And then I flew over in April, and my start date was June 1st of 2017.
Yeah, I mean, you've obviously worked for some huge companies prior to LFC, but what were the kind of first things that struck you, working for a football club and particularly one that, was so close to your heart?
I think for me, it's like any industry, it's business. My experience prior to that was 10 years at EA, 5 years at Microsoft. So to your point, worked at very large companies, and my first few months were understanding the people, understanding what we needed to do as an enterprise to, help create this virtuous cycle of driving as much revenue as we possibly could to be able to, invest that on the pitch, which we were ultimately able to do, build our commercial relationships. From my perspective, I have the unique ability to get closer to the fans, both locally and globally, build civic relationships with the mayor, both mayors, chief constable, everybody pretty much that ran the city of Liverpool because of the reliance of revenues that were coming in from Liverpool Football Club, close to £500 million a year, drop into the bottom line for the city itself and doing so much good for the city on a global basis. As well as doing so much for the community and locally, and pretty quickly thereafter I founded my own foundation here and funded that and started to figure out how I could help the people here once they understood some of the issues that we were facing as Liverpoolians, both during that time and in fact even more so right now.
Yeah, I remember when you first joined, you were very very visible and very vocal on social media, communicating with fans and so on. I think there was a bit of confusion. Some people thought that you were responsible for transfers, and that was certainly, people are always trying to get in touch telling you to buy X, Y, and Z, but you always responded and you're always engaging with them. And was that kind of a conscious decision, or was that just you being natural and as a supporter?
It's something that flowed over from my days at EA, where I had formed kind of a group within EA that would help me engage with gamers. And we needed that at EA for a lot of reasons during that period of time. I'm talking, 4 or 5 years ago, to help the company engage deeper with gamers who had a little bit of a suspicion, if you will, about big gaming publishers. And I had the personality and the, I think the willingness to engage, help them, give the human side to EA, which was important to hundreds of millions of gamers who engage with our games throughout the year. And I felt that it would probably be appropriate to do the same with our fans here in Liverpool and around the world. And so I took my Twitter account, changed the handle a little bit to LFC, and started to engage and kind of experimented with it over the first few months of what was appropriate, what was inappropriate, what was what would add value to gamers, and a lot of it then I took very privately through DMs. Initially, it was very much me being seen to tweet and tweet back, or lesser to you guys, Instagram or Facebook, but primarily Twitter as the platform. And then I think in the last 18 months to 2 years, most of what I have done has been very much, people. I would follow people would ask me to follow them, and then we would go offline, if you will, and help them. And dozens, if not bluntly hundreds, of situations where people needed help, family needed help, simple stuff, sorting out their problems with retail, all the way to terminally young children that just wanted to meet their heroes, and every kind of stop in between. So I was using social media in an innovative way that I felt could be of value to our fans.
Yeah, it seemed like a very large remit, but how kind of difficult a decision was it to announced in July that you were going to step aside? Was that always part of your plan, or was it something that has just kind of developed over a certain amount of time since you've been at the club?
Well, I'd signed a 3-year deal commencing June 1st, and in fact we extended that as the season got extended because of the pandemic, and so we another 2, maybe 3 months extension on that just to get us through into September, and make sure that the club was in fine shape coming through the pandemic. And we had a succession plan with Billy Hogan in place. He's been with the club 8 years, and an FSG veteran. So very smooth transition, as you could probably see. And a lot of the rationale behind it is my wife and I have 6 kids between us. When I say kids, my eldest is 37, but spread all over America. I have one daughter who lives here, loves Liverpool, and lives here with us. But the other 5 are spread between kind of New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco. And I think, our plans were always to go back, but, what's gone on and since March has really accelerated that thought process of we just need to get back. And, I'm approaching 66 years of age, so you've only got so much time with your kids. And so from that perspective, we decided that it was probably the right time. We couldn't have, done more, bluntly, when you look at the 3 years and so much visible on the pitch, what it achieved, but off the pitch, you see it a little bit, Paul, because you're local, from the perspective of what we've been able to do, get closer to fans, get closer to the community, get closer to civic leaders, make the club feel a tighter part, both locally and globally, of this kind of ecosystem of fans and club and players and manager, and kind of break down some of those barriers of, fans have somewhat of a suspicion of the people who run clubs, the corporates, quote unquote, the suits, quote unquote. And I wanted to, I think Liverpool's different. The city of Liverpool is different. Liverpudlians are different. I am one of those, and I wanted to make sure that they recognized that I was representing not only my bosses, but also the city and the people who live in the city, and the people, as I traveled the world and did official Liverpool Supporters Club events, 16 different events around the world, going into a bar, and the official Supporters Club bar in Cape Town, Dubai, Bangkok, Shanghai, Madrid, Munich, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and spending the evening with them and talking about the club and making a presentation. And I felt that was important. And so all of that came together, I think, well over the 3 years. And as I say, with like any well-run company, if you will, you need a succession plan. And that succession plan was Billy Hogan. And Billy has hit the ground running, as you might imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it was someone I wanted to ask about, actually, Billy. He's obviously worked as the COO before taking over your role. Almost feels like, from the outside looking in, a very organic kind of transition for Billy to step into that role and kind of carry on the work that he's been doing. That's something that you'd agree with?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the success stories that you can point to with this football club is our commercial growth, which gives us the ability to bring in quality sponsors that are global sponsors that obviously drive revenue to the bottom line. But equally importantly, these are people that activate the Liverpool Football Club brand on a worldwide basis. The likes of a Nike most recently bought, AXA, Standard Chartered. All of these companies, not only, as I say, do they help us with, the revenue, but help us with our presence on a global basis. They're all global companies. And Billy has been at the forefront of that and will continue to drive that. And it's important. If we're going to compete and continue to compete in a self-sustaining manner with the top clubs in the world, some of whom have slightly different business models, then we need to continue to drive the top line with companies that want to be associated with Liverpool Football Club. And it's truly a virtuous cycle, which they pay you, large sums of money, and you take those large sums of money, you invest in defenders, midfielders, forwards, goalkeepers, and those guys deliver results. And the better you are as a football club, the better quality of sponsors want to be associated with you. And it's truly a virtuous cycle that we adhere to as our business model here.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 10 years now since Fenway Sports Group took over the club, since that chaotic week in the High Court in London. It's not been an overnight success story, but it certainly has been a success story, particularly in the last couple of years. Where do you think, obviously, Jürgen coming in was seen as a catalyst, but where else do you think have been like the big kind of success points for FSG to kind of, hang their hat on almost?
I think it's developing, sticking to, and executing against a long-range plan that has patience, that has capital, that is not taking money out of the football club as its core tenants. The first few years, we're not great, and some turmoil in there. To your point, landing the manager that they wanted to land, and then backing that manager and putting the infrastructure in place, having, if you will, the foresight to develop an organizational structure that is the modern football club, that is the manager, that is the sporting director, that is the CEO, all reporting in vertical channels, and each having very clear responsibilities. That's the key element, I think, to our success. And FSG, on top of that, invested their capital in things like the new main stand, the new mega store, obviously the Kirby training center, which is absolutely world class, and the team will be moving into that soon. All of that, fans don't really focus on that stuff, but it's integral and core to the long-term success of the football club. And as much, for example, as we love Melwood, it probably ultimately, is not fit for purpose for what you need, particularly when you want to bring your academy closer to your first team. And the success that we're having with our academy and the players that are coming through, that becomes even more critical. And the fact that they were a good 20-minute drive from each other, wasn't ideal. And most of the football clubs we compete against, that is not the case. Everything is integrated, and that's what we needed to do. And so I think what FSG has been able to do is very similar to what they did with the Boston Red Sox. And I have this unique perspective because I was living in Boston when they acquired the Red Sox, and 86 years of futility of not winning a World Series, and here we stand today and they've won 3. And a lot of that to do with focus on basically data and science and having a long-term strategy, believing in people. Very similar there, young general manager Theo Epstein, who came in and they believed in him, and he had the ability to identify talent and to get great value for that talent. And the result of that is 3 championships. So, and very similar to what we're doing here, or what,
just a couple more then, Peter. You leave Liverpool with a legacy that saw you kind of champion the growth of LFC women. Instrumental in making sure that Sean Cox and his family didn't walk alone, if you like, and quite a lot to kind of hang your hat on now that you leave the football club. What would you say you're most proud of across the 3 years?
I mean, for me, somebody said, we had a few leaving events a few weeks ago, and somebody came up to me, who shall remain nameless, but and said, the one thing I want to say, forget everything went on the field. As a fan, I've never felt closer to the football club that I love, and that's down to you. And that one statement I will take with me, and that all of the things you can point to from money and spreadsheets and business and operating structure and whatever are great, but when somebody says they've never felt closer to the football club they love, and that's down to you, then that's what I've taken with me, and that's what I'll take back to the United States with me, is something I will remember.
Yeah, I'll just find it then, Peter. What's your message to your former employees, FSG, as they approach their 10-year anniversary as owners, and what do you say to the supporters who you served for 3 years?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's congratulations to obviously to my bosses for everything they've achieved. Coming in, believing in the football club, fighting to get control of the football club. Difficult time, as we all remember, during that period, and I was even coming over then 10, 11 years ago, and being patient, getting to know what this football club was about, more than just acquiring a sports team, if you will, and I think the previous owners never bothered to do that. Believing in Anfield as a spiritual home rather than knocking it down and go build something on Stanley Park. Believing in the history of the football club and maintaining relationships with former players, and despite a difficult time with Kenny, keeping him on board, a very important part of this football club, investing their capital, not taking a penny out of this football club, which they haven't done. And, I was happy for them. I was more than happy. I was delighted for them in Madrid, and I was sad that they couldn't be with Kenny and Rushy and I in Anfield the night the Premier League trophy was presented. They simply weren't allowed into the United Kingdom because they were from the United States and all of the travel restrictions. So I think it's if you will, it's Exhibit A of when a operating group sees something that they know that they can go get with a fight, go get it, and then be patient enough to invest and invest and invest, both financially, both with people, and the end result of the last 18 months on the pitch has been reward for them. And for the fans, I am one. I always will be one. For me, this is my 61st year supporting this football club, and I like to think that I exit going back to California, set my alarm clock for 3:30s for those dreaded Saturday lunchtime kickoffs. That I always will be a fan, and the ability to come here for 3 years, add value, I think, to the football club, add value to the fans, I think. Certainly the feedback that I get is that I did in some small way, and add value to the city in which I was born, city my dad was born, my granddad, and I know what this football club means to the people of this city, and getting the two closer, for me was part of my goals and objectives. And as I said, I think I've achieved that, and I hope it stays that way.
Yeah, I'd certainly echo that. I would say you've certainly achieved that. Peter, I want to just say thank you very much for your time this afternoon. It's really appreciated.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
All the best.
Cheers. Take care. Bye.